Hi everyone, this is Lyanne and this is From the Heart. And today I have Sophia on. If you've listened to older episodes, I was on Sophia's podcast. She was interviewing me. Now we're doing the reverse. So now we're getting her wisdom. And today it's going to be on Ayurvedic medicine, which is something that Sophia has trained in and has some knowledge in, and she uses and incorporates it with the clients that she sees. And I'm someone who grew up with a little bit of knowledge here and there from my dad and from my family, and also when I was visiting India. Like I kind of like understand just the little concepts, and it's kind of like ingrained in my head, and it can be really basic as well. It really doesn't have to be overwhelming to like add into your lifestyle. So that's what I really like about it. It's just it can be really simple if you choose to make it like that. Also, disclaimer: I washed my hair, and so I look like a wet human today for the episode. So that feels good, when in this crazy heat. Yeah, Sophia, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about what Ayurvedic medicine is? And we'll start with that.
Yeah. First, thank you for having me on. It's always nice to be the other side,
Yeah.
hosting and also the being host, so the guest. So yeah, no, my background is complex, and I see the journey has started actually a decade ago with my own healing, starting from a relationship rupture that brought me to the diving down the rabbit hole of who am I and the truth seeker, basically, which I still have within me, but it's less of an external searching. It's more of an inner connection and a remembering of, oh, like I'm home here, I'm good. And Ayurveda found me about 4 years ago when a second teacher training I did my first yoga teacher training in Guatemala, and second one I did Ayurvedic advanced training with yoga in Costa Rica. And it just was another tool in my toolbox to help me understand myself better, as I was suffering from emotional eating, over exercising, basically numbing myself, numbing the pain I was feeling, swallowing it, trying to escape from it, and feeling very lost and disconnected. Self with the world. I was self-sabotaging, let's put it that way. And Ayurveda spoke to me because it's so, as you mentioned, so, I like to say, commonsensical when you just learn the basic principle around it. And it's a natural healing system. So it stems from the Vedic system in India 5,000 years plus ago. And it's one of the oldest forms of medicine, if not the oldest one, the healing sciences of the world. And it works both on a preventative level and a preservative or curative medicine level. And it basically reminds you that you are nature. And being a nature enthusiast all my life and will always ever be, I really was drawn to that aspect where, I was done with the Western medicine prescriptions of, I don't know basically what you have, or I'll give you a pill. Like I was done with that. And of course, like Ayurvedic medicine is complementary to Western medicine. We can see Western medicine as beneficial for acute conditions, and Ayurvedic medicine can help you when you're recovering, so to strengthen the body and to preserve your health and to make sure you live a long and healthy life. So this is where I began to essentially reclaim my health, where I was stopping actually to seek out there for any answers. And I started to realize it's actually based on a radical self-responsibility with how I actually manage my energy during the day. So that comes back to my choices. So Ayurveda it lets us know in its philosophy that you are nature. You're the microcosm as a reflection of the macrocosm. And you're basically an alchemist. We have all the elements in us because we're made of all of us. And we get to notice with deep self-awareness and attunement to all the external factors and environments that stimulate us when we go off balance and when we're in our balance, in our flow, let's say, in our ease. So this is where I was like, okay, I have a choice. I can continue down this path of like really depriving me of nutrients and food and over exercising and burning out, or I can start making adjustments. So that was eons ago, maybe 8 years ago that pivot happened. And it's been a journey. And still to this day, I mean, it's constantly this dance, right? Every morning I get to wake up and say, what do I need today? Because there's this part of us that's always changing, this natural part of us, this body's always changing with everything that's changing around us. So it's up to us to shift and change and not resist the flow of life, the seasons. And we have nature as our best guide here. And we have our own bodies as our best guide.
Yeah.
We'll stop it.
The body, our bodies, like honestly, the more we learn about life, the more we have to come back to the body, which is really interesting. The podcast that you and I did was about human design, and then like that's like, you know, what human design is teaching is coming back to our bodies and listening to that intuition that's like, you know, in our bellies. At least for me, and it is for you too, according to our human design. And then like Ayurvedic medicine is like saying the same thing. And it's been a really old tradition, and human design is a very new kind of tool that we're using. I like wanted to, like you were just talking about like how we can use Ayurvedic medicine and like we can use it with Western medicine, and we can kind of switch. So I'm like the person who actually did this switch. So when I have a pain in my knee, I have like swelling, I've had this my entire life. I saw this Ayurvedic doctor, and I'm not sure who calls each other what or anything. Like I don't understand the labeling, the terminology of the people, but I saw this man who had a lot of knowledge around it, and he gave me these two remedies. And then because I have these two remedies that are Ayurvedic with herbs in them, it works better than Tylenol and Advil, because for me, Tylenol gives me like these vision side effects, and then the Advil gives me gastrointestinal side effects. And then when I switched, I'm like, oh, it's so good, it's so different. So for me, like this has really worked. And also in my knowledge, I also know that in research, we know that herbs and spices are actually the second most nutrient food for the human. And so for me, like this makes sense. It really makes sense for me. So, so are there any definitions you want to give us before we kind of like talk more in depth, or should I ask you the next question?
Yeah, well, I guess the definitions or the vocabulary that could be helpful to explain is basically doshas.
Mm-hmm.
If maybe you've come across the word Ayurveda and then dosha came across, even maybe Prakruti and Vikruti, those I think are the three ones we should understand. First of all, Ayurveda, translated as the science of life, or the knowledge of the self. So that in itself paints the picture like, the science of life. And I also like to see it as the art of living, because Ayurveda really becomes a way of life. It becomes a way where you are living in rhythm with your own rhythm, with your own cycles, and with the cycles and rhythms of nature. And when we look at doshas, and I mentioned this briefly before, we are the microcosm as a reflection of the macrocosm. If we see everything we see outside of us as a creation based out of the 5 elements, so space, air, water, fire, and earth, we are part of that creation. The doshas are energetic principles that are a combination of these 5 elements. and they govern everything that is in nature outside and within us. So this starts painting the picture when we get into, well, what is the remedy to these dis-eases and disorders we're experiencing when we balance? It's all about the balancing act. So your dosha, there's 3 of them. The main one, Pitta, Vata, Kapha. Pitta governs the energy of digestion and assimilation, Vata the energy of movement, and Kapha the energy of lubrification. And we're talking about, this is like the basic biology of the body. And all these energies are in us. The thing is that what I love about Ayurveda is that it's unique. There's not a one size fits all. It's not like the fads of like, now it's paleo, now it's vegan, and then we're all left confused because for me, vegan works, but for you, it doesn't. So it's like, oh, right. So my constitution, so my mind-body constitution is different than Lyanne's. I need more grounding food, perhaps. Lyanne needs a bit more pungent. Like me, pungent is like no bueno. Pungent is basically spicy, like chili stuff. But it takes like inner body connection to start realizing what actually does my body want and what doesn't vibe with it, right? And it's not only we're talking about the food, we're talking about the people, the environments, the places that we're in, right? The toxicity that we take in every day through our senses, it's a lot. So that's why we constantly have to balance out. And this may sound stressful perhaps for some listeners. It's like, oh my gosh, I always have to be kind of a hyper vigilant. But this is when the beauty of just allowing yourself to experience life with presence comes into play. When you get to know yourself so well, you start making choices based off of the knowledge you have of your strengths, your limitations, your energy, basically, where it's going. And we're looking at, I think I'll mention this now, just the basic principle is opposites balance and like increases like. So you look at, I am highly anxious. I may not want to go into a noisy environment with a lot of people when I'm highly anxious, because that's going to aggravate me. I'm going to want to go to maybe the forest and put my feet on the ground and be maybe alone. That's going to ground me. So that's just an example of like, and we could use herbs, we can use food also in understanding the rasas, the tastes and the qualities of certain foods and their effects in our body. And same as the herbs, like we use food as medicine, and we also realize that food can be toxic when used improperly.
You
So
said, you said this thing about like coming back to presence, which again kind of brings us back to like coming back to our body. Is there like a because so my dad always taught me a little bit about more the food aspect, and then when I did my yoga teacher training, they again talked about like, you know, like what would Ayurveda medicine kind of look like. They were just kind of giving us a snippet of it. But does Ayurveda have like a practice or even herbs to like kind of help us bring us back to our presence for like different people or for everyone?
Yeah, I love the question because this brings in the very multidimensional aspect of Ayurveda that is not only herbs and foods. And yes, there is an aspect of it, but it's also relating to breath work, yoga asana, exercise, movement, and proper rest. So basically, I like to just summarize it as lifestyle choices. It really comes back to that. And again, brings back the power to you being like, well, what would nourish me in this moment, knowing that this may not be the same for me in a month or 2 months or even tomorrow. So it takes us out of that I need to always be the same, like the very masculine way of living, linear, consistent, which is beautiful. And it's important to have a consistent practice, but can we be flexible and adaptable based on our own rhythms? based on the changing of the seasons, of the moon, of the cycle, especially for women that were so affected by the moon. We're very multidimensional, and we're up and down. So it's up to us to realize this nature of ours that's always changing, and to stop shaming it. So yes, you can use herbs. You can use certain herbs and essential oils and practices. One of my favorites is Abhyanga, self-massage, to really calm down your nervous system, to bring you back to a space of grounding and presence. It could also be 3 deep breaths. It can also be mindfully eating or preparing food with love for yourself. There's so many different ways.
There's a lot of like the examples you gave all reminded me. So I'm like starting to teach these childbirth classes, and like so effleurage, I'm talking about effleurage to people, and I'm actually talking about co-regulating, or not co-regulating, but regulating the nervous system, and then like someone else massaging you would be in part co-regulating, and then I talk about like preparing meals for after birth. Like everything you just said, it like brought me back to birth. Those are like really, everything you said just comes back to everything that I'm learning now about like regulating the nervous system. For me, in my world, what I'm seeing is like everyone's talking about the vagus nerve and the regulation and all of that. So you just brought me right back to all of that. And it's really nice that we don't just have like there's more than just one tool in the toolbox. Like there can be, a meditation, a very long meditation, a very short meditation. There can be just preparing food and being present and smelling and tasting, and dance would be one of them too. And it's really nice to know that this is like an all-encompassing kind of, not too prescriptive kind of medicine. And then again, it just comes back to the body, and you're like, what would feel good right now while I'm feeling a little bit out of sorts, or I just want to stay in like a good flow right now, Yeah. So what's like kind of relevant for right now, like very early July and all this heat is, do you want to talk a little bit about what we can do in this like really insane heat? So like for me, heat is really nice. I love summer. It's really my time of year, but the heat with like the humidity here in Ottawa, it is a lot, and actually is taking a bit of a toll on me, and I'm very, very like slow, and I actually can give myself a little bit of permission to be slow, so like that's great. But I know that it, like the heat has been depleting me because it's so much. So you want to talk about some of the things we can do to help ourselves during this time of year?
Yeah, for sure. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, the summertime is most the pitta dosha, which is going to be very predominant. And for the pitta dosha, well, pitta and vata. So pitta is very, look at the gunas, so qualities for each dosa, and for the element, which is fire, we can look at it as sharp and drying a little bit, heating, obviously, and we can see it as a time that can aggravate a lot of pitta. So the people that are predominant pitta, like me, it's the tendency to be irritable or angry or impatient can increase, as well as the joy and passion and the creativity, which is also this quality, and the sharpness in the mind. So any insights coming in, any creative endeavors that we're seeing being brought to life. So it's a beautiful time to bask in. But if I can offer some key practices or things to remind ourselves of to ride the wave of summer the best we can, is to cool, to rest, to remember to enjoy, and to moderate ourselves, like moderation, and also to ground. Grounding is very important because of that vata undertone. There's a drying quality to the heat,
Mm.
Even if you're in humid places, there depending on the place, there could be some vata there, which we always want to make sure the vata is balanced, which is the air and space element combined, because there's already a lot of anxiety in our modern day society. So we always want to keep that one in check. So, for example, like think for your food, eat light. And again, this is where you see the body already knows.
Mm.
Like you're going to maybe smaller meals, light, easy to digest, and you're staying hydrated. Your digestive fire is less strong in the summer. In winter, it's stronger. That's why we can afford to have a little more comfort food in the winter, because all the fire is going inside here to heat us up. Whereas the fire in our digestive system is kind of dispersing itself throughout our bodies in the summer. So that's why we want to make sure our meals are not filled with like fried or fatty or very heavily oily foods, nothing processed, so that our digestive system stays running well. Digestion is key for Ayurveda, for our mood, for our energy levels. It's really, really important. When you look at drinking, hydration is super key. And when we start incorporating the herbs here, this is where we realize we have everything we need in nature. And here in Canada, we have access to herbs and some flowers that can be very cooling. So we have mint is really nice, cucumbers and lime that makes a nice like water that's refreshing.
Mm.
And we have also for spices, think of coriander, fennel, rose is nice, hibiscus, making a tea off of those. You can have aloe vera, so aloe plants. You can make an aloe drink from the gel. I like to add a bit of lime water into that. And if you want a little bit of sugar, because it's a bit bitter, the aloe, you add a bit of coconut sugar. Coconut's great, very cooling. Any type of coconut milk, coconut water, coconut itself, shredded coconut.
Mm.
So those things keep us cool. So you want to think in terms of tastes. You want to favor the sweet, astringent, and bitter tastes, and you want to avoid the salty, pungent, or sour tastes. So these are just ways that we can help ourselves stay cool and calm, basically, from the inside out. And always recommended to eat seasonally and locally, right? If you can, that's always the best. In terms of exercise and movement, you want to make sure you're exercising early, because if it's really hot and you have the peak of the sun in the wee hours of the day, like you're not going to go for a run then. You're going to want to go because that's going to aggravate your pitta. So you see the doshas have actually times during the day, the 24-hour clock as well. So you want to exercise early in the morning, which will alleviate you from the heaviness of the sleep time that we've gone through. So to get past the kapha stage of the day, we can add some exercises. We want to avoid strenuous exercise or intense and competitive exercises, because that will aggravate your pitta. Pitta is already quite competitive and ambition. So exercise to 50 to 70% of your capacity. Swimming is great for the summer, right? And do it in the evening or early morning. And what else can I share? Yes. So if you are practicing Abhyanga, so self-massage, which is a beautiful self-care and self-love practice, opt for coconut oil because it's a cooling oil. You can also use sunflower oil too. But yeah, coconut oil is beautiful, and also with your hair, because it's very drying. The sun is very drying for the hair, so you can just lather yourself in oil. And then a very important part of summer is to actually enjoy. So if you are a type of person like me that's very like driven and focused, and your pitta, like you gotta go, you're focused, blah, 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 it can be beautiful, but just be mindful of the tendency to go overboard and to actually not miss out, but completely neglect the beauty of summer, which is to relish in the abundance of life and the joy and the spontaneity, the friendships, the play, the festivals, whatever's going on in your local environment. It's like we're being asked to celebrate, right? So it's, yes, you're working in a sense, but it's more like you're nourishing and sustaining. It's the nourishing and sustaining phase. Like the working phase is like the spring, when you're cultivating the earth, you're planting the seeds, you're seeing it grow. Now is like, whoa, like I am nourishing myself. I am nourishing myself. I'm nourishing my family, my friends. I'm creating these environments where I can forge connection, meaningful connection and intimacy. And I'm taking in life. I'm like eating life. That's the way I like to look at it. So, and there's also an aspect of rest, right? Because pitta, they tend to like be like workaholics. Like you want to make sure you're resting. Okay. And also for the vata, because you could be aggravated vata wise in terms of overwhelm. There's so many activities and like feel a bit ungrounded. So again, you ask yourself, well, what brings me a sense of grounding? Right? What would feel really good for my body and my mind right now, my heart, right? And then and yeah, that's that's basically kind of a summary. Mhm.
Yeah, that's really nice. Just an aside, this is like from, I think, Chinese medicine as well as indigenous. So like the when I was doing my teacher training, one of my teachers talked about, she did a lot of like yin teachings, and so she was saying that the summer was the heart and the lungs for the meridians, and then I've heard through friends that the summer is the part, like represents the heart, and but right now it's also strawberry season, and so and it's all like kind of, it all connects, it's all kind of really similar. You can tell that when there's wisdom and deep knowing, it kind of resonates with other things. All right, so like we were talking like the seasons, we were specifically talking about summer because it's relevant to right now, but then there are like different life times, and then you were talking to me when we were talking one-on-one about like childhood, and so I just would like if you want to go through like different times in our lives and what they represent and how we can take care of ourselves during those times, that would be really great.
Yeah. Yeah, so just like there's a cycle for the seasons, for the day, there's also cycles in your life. So when we look again at the doshas, the three doshas, they represent the three phases of our life. The early phase, the beginning of our life here on earth, is marked by the kapha dosha. So again, kapha, the elements are water and earth. And already just knowing that, you look at water and earth, it's like, oh, it's very like grounding and like nourishing. It's like earthy energy. And this is about children growing and building the strength and the the physical body, building the physical body up. So kapha is all about the joints, the the muscles, right? So remember those growing pains, like that happens between early childhood and puberty, like grosso modo, right? And this is the phase where you're developing your body, so there's a lot of energy that is needed. That's why like kids tend to eat more, they need more food. The thing is that we need to remind ourselves as parents to make sure that we're supporting our children in this kapha stage with the right herbs, food, lifestyles. This is why exercise is so, so, so important for children, keeping them active. Maintaining that regular sleep and wake routine is super important so that they're also resting properly, but not over sleeping. That's a kapha tendency. And balancing with the proper foods. So you want to look at the bitter, pungent, and astringent foods and minimize the sweets, which is ironic because a lot of kids want sweets all the time. Okay. And we look at mucus. This is why you can see kids with a lot of mucus. That's because kapha is the lubrication, and it's normal to have more mucus. So the thing with the sweets and the dairy products, especially, is that just aggravates the mucus.
Mm.
Okay, so we want to counter that with balancing it with astringent, bitter, and pungent foods. Okay, so that's kapha, and then after that we go into pitta. So pitta is the majority of, I guess, maybe your listeners. It's like, if we want to put numbers, like 16 to 50, sort of like the working lives part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
This is when we are in building whatever we're building, right? Our careers, our families, our relationship. These are formative years, our identity. We're developing our skills, our talents. We're in that, we're in the doing phase of our life, let's say. So just like the summer, like, we just want to make sure that we're balancing that ambition, and we're making sure that we're channeling our life force energy, our pitta energy, our drive into something that really lights us up, right? And it's leveraging on our innate gifts and talents, and that we're maybe not living somebody else's life, which tends to happen. So this is when we get into maybe the next topic we'll talk about, like these midlife crises or these moments when we get in depression. So pitta time is very sensitive because there's a lot of people that are pitta in this world, and maybe they've been pushed into being pitta because it's all about productivity, efficiency, go, 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 the next thing. But it's never really, the world is not really conducive, at least here anyways, to relishing in the pleasure of just being alive. So that's why people with more kapha predominancy will feel maybe like left behind, or like feel as though they're like pushed forward.
Yeah.
Whereas we can learn a lot from kapha and learn to bring more of that kapha online. And for vata, the last phase of our lives is the midlife to end of life's time of your life. This is when you get more achy joints. You get cooler, drier. Everything's more irregular. Let's say your digestive fire begins to cool during this phase as well. So it makes you a bit more sensitive to certain foods that perhaps before you could handle just fine. And this is the part that people find it very hard, because they were so used to like their pitta that is very valued in this society, that they're kind of like resisting the vata stage, especially for women with menopause and everything, and their body shifting and blah, 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 blah. Like, I think there's a part of us that we're missing out on the beauty of vata, which is, remember, the elements is air and space. So you're more prone to be intuitive. Like, those gifts are always there, but they're coming online more. You're just in a phase of life where there's more wisdom coming through, right? It's like the crone archetype. It's the wise and elder, right? That again is not really, she's not as revered as the mother, let's say. So we have to again look at our lifestyle and adjust accordingly. Just like the leaves don't question if they're going to fall or not in the fall, right? It's just like the flower doesn't question that she's going to open in the summer. It's just we inadvertently have forgotten those patterns somewhere, and we resist. We always want to be open. We always want to be like this, but we're not always going to be in our pitta phase. And we get to experience all of these seasons, all of these phases in our lives, and there's a way for us to do it in a way that's graceful and enjoyable. So just to wrap up, like the vata phase is really asking us to slow down, to ground ourselves, right? Because if we're not, we're going to be highly anxious. Remember the out of balance vata? Just think of space and air. It's like, whoa, like I'm in my mind. Whereas a beautiful aspect is the creativity, the insights, the inspiration, the intuition that's flowing through. Like, this is where there's a second wave of creativity. Maybe it's not the creativity of creating a baby anymore, but it's a different type of creativity. And are we able to honor that, right?
So yeah, not waiting for society to honor that, but doing it ourselves, because that's like the little increments that actually do change.
Somebody else is going to give you that permission.
All right, so let me just look up the next question here. In my world, I feel like there's a lot of awareness being brought to our mental health and depression specifically, but there's also, anxiety, this burnout in the world of the medical field is very prevalent. And we were just talking about the overdoers, but anyway, so just do you have like comments to bring that back to balance, and maybe some herbs or anything? We kind of touched on some of it, but
yeah, the reason why I'm not giving specific herbs is, first of all, I don't know all of them. I mean, I do know a few, like ashwagandha is great for the nervous system rebalancing. But it's more, I really see Ayurveda like as choices, like lifestyle practices. And sure, you can do the herbs and food, but at the end, it's like, what feels nourishing to me? So before even talking about the herbs, it's like, well, what is actually going on in me, and what is causing me to feel this way, right? And it doesn't mean that you're going to start questioning this once you get the diagnosis or just feel really blah. Like a lot of the times we go to the doctor and we feel off. We intuitively feel it, but the doctor doesn't really know what we have. It's this question mark. So it's up to us to feel into that imbalance and then know that we have tools on hand to bring us back into balance. So when we look at this holistically or just very generally, anxiety and depression and any imbalance really comes down to not knowing your true self. It's a very deep disconnection and severing from who you truly are, your natural essence, your true nature. And this, we can look at this from multiple levels, but just to keep it concise, you can look at it from the beginning. When you look at your childhood, you're connected to your mother, you're communicating in a way that's not even verbal at the beginning. You're just latching onto her tit, you're sucking on her, you're taking in her juice and her love, hopefully, and you're bonding and you feel safe. You can look at it in the womb, you feel the safest. But then once like you start interacting with the jungle of life, basically when you're starting to socialize with kids, and when you experience death for the first time, maybe a member of your family or a death of an animal or something, like our society anyways, like parents want to protect. And then we like cuddle the baby, and then we develop all these protective mechanisms that separate us from nature. Right? We can just look at the birthing process in hospitals now with like big lights and but I won't go in there. But it's for just to look at the beginning of the separation with my true self. We begin to conform into the mold that society wants us to conform in. We start to follow a set of rules that we're at the beginning blindly following. So we're starting to abandon ourselves further and further and further and further, because we believe that there is a certain path that we need to take in order to be successful. Also, when we experience our first heartbreaks, generally, this is when our protective mechanisms comes in so that we don't experience any more heartbreak. But what happens? I create a barrier around my heart, around my body, and my mind, my beautiful mind that should be used for discernment is now used to cut me, because my mind is now trying to protect me, reminding me of the hurt and pain I experienced in the past, projecting it into future invented scenarios of what could happen. And then I'm left in not doing anything, stagnation, staying with the status quo, because I'm afraid of actually going for what I want, expressing my truth, my desires, my longings, perhaps because somebody told me something and it just stayed with me. So this is why it becomes a revolution when you start being self-empowered and taking the reins back in your health and your life through Ayurveda and other modalities, yoga, whatever other medicines you're or practices you're involved with. it's really a beautiful rediscovery of your true essence, right? And you begin to thank your mind, and you begin to thank all the triggers and all the situations that brought you to this point of maybe crumbling on the floor, crying in your snot, because you're realizing, shit, I had to go through that to experience that pain and that hurt and that sense of abandonment to come home to me, to hold me, because we stop blaming and victimizing ourselves at one point because it's too easy, right? And we still stay with that void in us that we can't seem to fill with food, sex, Netflix, or even trips. It's really something that we turn towards. And this is what happens when when depression sets in and anxiety. It's like the mind and body shut down because it goes like it revs up. Usually it's like this anxiety, like, oh my gosh, like I'm so in my mind because I'm so worried of what other people think. A lot of the times it's fear of rejection. We all want to be, belong. But then like it's burns off our whole system, and then it goes and then it's a shutdown. But that shutdown is really at the core based off of the fact or the realization, without being conscious, that I don't know who I am anymore. And I don't feel as though I belong here anymore. I don't feel I'm valued here anymore. Like your flame, so the pit of flame is so low that it is just, you can't get up anymore. Like your fire is what gets you up in the morning. The passion, the drive, the desire to contribute, to experience life, to taste life, to share your life. Like that's gone. And to varying degree, you can see the spectrum, but if it gets to depression, that gets to a point where you don't even want to live anymore, perhaps. And it's we call it mental health, and yes, it is, as I mentioned, like the mind that's cutting itself because it's really overprotecting you and shielding you from actually living out your purpose and your truth and the reason why you're here. But at the end of the day, like the remedy is not more affirmations being like, I am enough, I deserve to be here. Sure, they can be complimentary, but it comes back to reconnecting you in your body and creating that safety for yourself to feel, first of all, the pain of abandonment that you felt, the rejection, whatever pain and trauma you felt, like to provide yourself with that space to feel, because that's, I think, the epidemic of our human race right now is that we feel less and less. So, but very part of being human is to feel. So can you allow yourself to feel? Can you actually give yourself the space to allow the body to do what it knows already how to do, which is move energy? Because what happens is that all our energy is shut down, like all our whole system. You can look at a chakra system, it's shut down. Energy is not moving up and it's moving down, but down to like just like the earth, like I'm basically dead. I'm waiting to die. Okay, so there has to be something, like if you're in this stage right now, there has to be like, this is when you come back like to maybe a beautiful memory or rekindle like something that brings a smile to your face, like just allowing that flame to maybe flicker a little bit, just a little bit, and to allow that to come back on, to maybe just go outside, to allow the sun to be on your skin. Like again, the sun, like this solar system, like the sun that basically powers everything on life, like that is within us. So can we receive that from nature? Like even just going into nature is therapeutic. So bringing yourself to nature, hug trees, like feel the connection, like look at how you're related. Look at your veins and look at the rivers. Look at when you ground your hands and it makes like the roots of a tree. Like plant your feet on the ground. Like there are ways and practices that can help you remember that you belong here, right? And this can go for anxiety too. Anxiety, if you think of the energy just being up here in the mind, like bring it back down into your belly, down to your feet, and like anchor yourself in the core. So a lot of the times when you're anxious, you're fearful. You're fearful of what's going to happen for a story you're creating based on the past. You're afraid a lot because you're externalizing your energy. You're putting all the emphasis on everything out there versus on what's actually going on in your body. So our job in healing any disorder really is to come back to self, come back home to body, come back to my center, and to cultivate the fire so that I can stand up tall and to speak my truth and to share my voice and to realize that, holy shit, like I have a gift. And yes, I'm going to have to be vulnerable. I'm going to have to go through the fire transformation. But the more I do that, the more I show up authentically, basically, the more I liberate others. And that's when the healing happens for a community, a family, society, and the world, is allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to stand up for yourself, to share your truth, to express yourself vulnerably. And this is when you realize, holy shit, I've been the answer all along. Yeah.
Yeah, our bodies have been the answer. A lot of like thoughts were coming up while you were thinking, but those are like great tools to kind of like maybe see and feel when we're feeling a little bit out of sorts, and then when we're really out of sorts, we need like more hand holding and some things like that. But like we can always use these tools to bring us back to balance, no matter if it's small or big. Yeah. All right. So I think those were my questions. Is there anything that like feels you really want to share for the listener, like about Ayurveda?
Well, I guess the summary is really like, begin, if you're on your journey, you're in a crunchy moment, the offering here is to be present with whatever is arising.
Yeah.
And being present is not easy. And I know we hear this a lot in the wellness scene. It's like, be present, just breathe. It's like, I know this was not my path. My path was not like sit down, meditate, and breathe. It was literally my system needed to move. That's part of my medicine. That's why dance for me is like therapeutic. And releasing some sexual energy, some like, and just releasing energy. If you look at a lightning rod coming down, there's no grounding. It's just going to jolt your system and you're going to go kaput. So again, I was mentioning Vata, the space and air, the two elements that are very predominant. It's called the king of doshas in Ayurveda for a reason. It's holds the other elements, right? So if we don't have our Vata balance, basically, which creates a lot of anxiety in our world, then all the other elements will be also kind of imbalanced. So we constantly want to have a practice each day that grounds us. Because if we're not grounded, our decisions may not come from truth, from an authentic place. Okay? We might be more triggered and reactive versus responsive. Responsible. I am responsible for my actions, my behaviors. So it can look like meditation in the morning, 3 deep breaths. I always recommend, if there's one time you want to do a self-care practice, it's early in the morning, because those are the times when your environment outside is conducive. There's a peacefulness in the air. There's a sattvic energy, which is conducive to balance, to tranquility, and to connection to source, to God, Allah, Buddha, whoever you believe in. So you can call in your guides and your ancestors to support you and prepare you for the day to come. So you look at your day as a pitta day. Okay, you're doing things. You're in your doing mode throughout the day. You're experiencing your day. You can also have a time out during your day to pause. So I call them the power pauses, the sacred moments when you're like, this is my break. Maybe it's lunch for you. You know, instead of working through your lunch, because our productive society is so focused on productivity, efficiency, and the multitasking nature, abusing our multitasking nature, especially as women, No, like I'm choosing to sit down, maybe to eat outside, to ground myself, to make a meal for myself versus always buying on the go and eating on the go. There's a way that I can invite in more presence in everything I do. But again, depending on where you're at in your journey, maybe you don't even have a self-care practice. So I'd recommend just start with the early morning because that also usually is a time when you're not disturbed by your kids
Mm.
or by any external demand. And if you think you are, then start questioning that. Like how much of your energy is being poured out versus being poured in? Remember, there's always the balance, and energy always wants to flow in and out, right? Is it always pouring out, which is the tendency, especially for women? Maybe it's always pouring in, and you're kind of like holding everything in,
Yeah.
which is less likely, but it could be.
Yeah, that definitely feels harder for a lot of people to even think about like what should they do for themselves and what's important for them. And this like balance of giving to our kids and feeling like it's selfish to prioritize yourself is really common in moms. And so I just want to like say that like it is common, and if the listener does that, it's not abnormal, but it is something that we have to like just rethink, because I always say like a, a pregnant woman who is healthy is going to make a healthy baby. And so the health of the mom always impacts the baby. And it is the same, maybe just like physically, like there's a separation now, but there's a sameness to that. And then just to remember, like, you know, we grew up with a mom that was a martyr mom. And how do we, like, maybe not all of us, but how do we feel about that? Does it make us feel good that our mom did absolutely everything for us? Or does it feel good that we saw our mom, you know, take a bath for herself one time, or um, washed her face when she just needed a moment of space? And so, like sometimes, like little moments to yourself are what brings you. So, you know, when I was a midwife, I'm not a mom, but when I was a midwife, you know, I had to deal sometimes in coming back down to my feet and actually decide not to move when I had a client who really wasn't coping. And so I just had to like, because how can I help her if I move the same pace as her? And so when I like just even like my voice could also be a little bit like kind of bossy. No, I can't do that. I'm here for you. My priority is your safety. And so kind of like coming from like that sort of energy, I actually would like focus a little bit on my feet. So that's like one of the things I did. So that's not an emergency, but it can feel like an emergency. And so what in a real emergency, I always told myself and I always told my students, you know, and emergencies don't happen very frequently in labor, but they you know, they happen sometimes, and a midwife is always doing her best to prevent, but then sometimes they happen. And so in that moment I always said, I'm taking a breath for myself and now I'm moving. And then and then like this whole like something else would take over me during that emergency, and I had done something for myself right before, right? And then of course the emergency would always wrap up and end, but sometimes it's a moment where it's just like, it's, you know, it's always thinking, it's always doing. And so those moments do happen, and we can always just add in just a teeny tiny bit of something, and then when it's done, you're gonna crash if you're a midwife, because sometimes like it's movement for like a few hours. And so so like I actually one time told my sister, I'm like, I'm so tired after real emergencies. She's like, yeah, Lyanne, that's normal. And because in the medical world, we don't normalize the tiredness. We normalize moving forward. And when my sister told me it's like normal to like be on the couch and be zonked like that, like I just want to normalize that it's okay to feel like that, because there is some life will sometimes throw us a really nice big curveball. And then what can you do when the curveball has passed? You know, flat tire. We're going to deal with the flat tire. We're going to move on. And so, anyways, yeah, like those are just like little things I did in the moments that felt like it could be impossible to bring it back to ourselves. Yeah. It's really nice to talk to someone because I often talk to myself. It's really nice to see how that that resonates with someone else. Sophia,
Mhm.
where can we find you, and what's going on in your life?
Yeah, no, this is a beautiful segue, your story. Thanks for sharing that, because it made me think of honoring our feminine rhythms, and the way that we're structured in this society is very masculine dominated, made for a man and his rhythm, which is fine, but for women it's even more of a, I got to take this on my, like, me being responsible and setting my boundaries and knowing where my energy's flowing, because we have a different rhythm. And this is part of my upcoming offering, which is Sacred Cycles Women's Retreat, happening in September, the 19th and 21st. I'm super excited. So it's close to Wakefield, the north of Ottawa, 45 minutes out. And it's really about reconnecting to your body's wisdom and really attuning to your own rhythms. And we're going to be learning about the archetypal embodiments that we go through in the 4 phases of the moon. So I'll be talking about the moon, and you do not need to be menstruating to participate, because we're still receiving the energy and we're still impacted by her. And it's really about being able to transition and change with more ease and grace. So as I was mentioning, in the stage of life, I've been noticing, because I've been working with women for 4 years, there's a lot of resistance when you're going through the stage of life, because we have also this thought of like beauty is everything and wisdom is secondary, right? Because it's not valued in society. But then I say it's up to you to start honoring it and valuing it. And that's going to give permission to more and more women to honor and value it. And that's what we need. We need a collective rising of women together. And when the feminine rises in her power, the masculine inevitably is called to rise. So, anyways, this is my kind of like creating harmony on earth, my vision. But yeah, so if anybody of your listeners are interested, there's 5 spots left for cabins and 3 for camping. And you can find me at my website. So it's alkimiahealingarts.ca, or on Instagram at Alkimia Embodied Healing Arts. I can give you the little in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put it in there.
Or send me an email, Sophia at alkimiahealingarts.org. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's it for now. I will be doing another online program. I just finished a 3-month program called Phoenix Rising. I'll be offering one that's related to the cycles. It's going to be year long, either starting in October, November, or January 1st, which I'm more leaning towards because it's universal year number 1 next year. So I feel it's going to be like a good initiatory year. This year's kind of a death and rebirth type of year, kind of crunchy, but it's really beautiful in terms of like illuminating what is not going okay in your life, and like coming to this place of like, okay, this is the support I need, or this is actually the direction I'm taking. This is what I'm shedding, what I'm leaving behind. This is the year for that. So we'll see. Stay in tune.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And we'll put that in the show notes for sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sophia, for sharing with us like your wisdom on Ayurvedic medicine. Yeah, it was super insightful and got me like thinking of lots of things too. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure talking about my passion.
Amazing. And thank you to the listener. Have a good day, everyone.